Got it.
Okay. I'm not sure how many we've got. 14. Okay. So welcome this afternoon to, well, what I started off calling TTSO Light as a short Saturday afternoon catch up on things in the last 12 months, but let's keep the tradition, TTSO17. Just a single afternoon this afternoon. And my slides aren't progressing, so how do I make them progress? Oh, here we go. So first up, I'd like to acknowledge the Wellington Astronomical Society, who have very graciously loaned us the Zoom facility over these 2 weekends. No, sorry, make that 1 weekend. This is me editing slides and not paying attention. So Murray Forbes is driving the show over there. We're recording this afternoon's sessions as separate pieces, and we'll endeavour to get them up as a downloadable at some time in the future. We'll let you know when that's available. So another slide from last year, rules of the house. Obviously, those people who are here have got in, but I'll take it on notice that next time I've got to do a better job with getting email links out and making it more obvious that this is the email link for people who lose stuff in their inboxes, myself included. We're only looking to have one person speaking at a time, so that's usually the presenter, so that's Dave and myself, or anyone else with open mic at the end. So can we ask everyone else to put their microphones on mute? The chat facility is there. If you've got questions that you want to direct to the presenter or to the forum as a whole, put some words in there. Everything you type, the default is to everything that you type is visible to everyone, but I think you can do directed chat to another individual on the call. And then the presenter's got the liberty of whether to try and watch that with one eye while talking or answer it at the end. If you have any technical difficulties, put something in the chat. There may be someone on the call who can help in that space. So short, sharp session this afternoon. It's just my backup, my summary of observation stats and organizational matters as the first item. Then Dave's going to run us through a summary of recent planetary occultation results. That's on a global basis, but presumably will include some local inputs. I've got a very short presentation. I've had a lot of trouble getting this one organized and I've run out of time for upcoming occultations. And I see I haven't updated the slide properly there. And then Dave's got a piece on the processing pipeline. I know a lot of observers are very interested in what happens going forward when you send your results to me, but there's quite a lot at the other end of that step that I'm not aware of. And at the end, if we've got any questions and queries or things people would like to say, by all means, we'll have an open session before we draw it to a close. Nominally 2 hours, it's very nominal. I'll try not to talk too long, and I don't know how we'll control Dave. So before we get too much further, I just want to acknowledge that this year we're missing a couple of people out of the amateur astronomical community in Australia and New Zealand, or in New Zealand in this case. John Talbot, a very central part of the RS and Z occultation section and onto the TTOA, was really the first proper regional report coordinator that we ever had. Designed the process from the get-go. That Excel spreadsheet and the processing pipeline that comes off the end of that is all John's work. When I took up the role in 2015 after John had suffered his stroke, I suddenly found myself totally reliant on the stuff that he'd written. He'd written some really good documentation, and I also found very quickly that there was no one else around who could answer any questions I had, so I had to make it up myself. So yeah, I didn't really realize how critical John was to the process until that happened. So the picture's there with his Homer de Bol award. which all of the regional coordinators received. I think that was in 2017. Dave, no doubt, can correct me on that. More recently, Bill Allen from Blenheim in New Zealand. Bill's wasn't our highest volume observer, but it was a bastion of amateur astronomy in New Zealand. I learned a little bit about him in more recent times, realized that he probably could have at some stage been borderline considered a professional, particularly when he was in the UK. So Bill was always at the forefront of technology, and a very early adopter of video, having previously done stuff with photoelectric. Bill's probably got more profile in the variable star community, but he was involved in everything. The 2015 Pluto campaign, Bill, some of the best observations for that campaign in New Zealand came from Bill's work. A very proficient observer, a great loss. I guess I should throw the mic open if there's anyone wanted to speak to these two at this point in time. Just throw your hand up if you wish. Okay, I'll keep going.
I've got my hand up.
Have you? Oh, I can't see your hands.
I'm trying to stick to it again.
That's good.
I recall Bill Allen from my master's degree days in the late 1980s, early 1990s, when I was studying cosmic rays with the Janzos collaboration. And he was involved with the Blenheim Observatory, the Alta Malloch Black Birch Observatory at the time. So we stayed up there at Black Birch, and he was one of the coordinators and helpers that helped this collaboration get off the ground. So he was very much involved in all kinds of activities, probably more than we know.
Yes, that's what was in both cases. When you come to look back, you suddenly realise what a great significance both of these people were to occultations and astronomy generally. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Why can't I see hands and things? Okay, assuming that no one else put their hand up, I'll keep going. So what I got here is our usual annual update on planetary occultation observations as reported to the Trans-Tasman Occultation Alliance. This is for calendar year 2022. I haven't done a lot in terms of crunching numbers for 2023, but there's some unusual trends in here. So just looking down the table of recent numbers, 2022 was a bit of an unusual one in the sense that the volume of reports and the volume of positives, the volume of everything basically was down. And it's the first time, well, we haven't had too many years where we've had less in a year relative to the previous. Number of observers was the same. And I think there's probably a couple of names drop off and a couple of names add on, but the overall observer pool was the same. But yeah, things were down. Now, my initial reaction when I saw this trend was, well, that's the La Nina weather, and certainly as a Queenslander, that was very much in my face. My personal, the dome stage shut an awful lot more in calendar year 2022 than typical, even if we didn't get a lot of rain. And that trend continued through into 2023. But when I got digging a little deeper in the numbers, I noticed that for some individual observers, there wasn't really a change at all. So I think it was a bit of a regional thing. I think Bill might have had a scope offline for a while in 2022, and Bill's observations are of such a significant portion that if Bill has an offline period, it makes a difference to the stats. So I haven't really analyzed any more deeply than that. But that's the chain we've got. There's still big numbers, an awful lot of stuff to process. But yeah, a change from 2021. My impression is that the first half of 2023 has been similarly weather impacted, certainly up our end of the world. although with the arrival of winter, that seems to have abated a little bit. So here's the monthly. It's a very crude graph. It's basically how many positive events were reported on each calendar month. And you can see that, yep, 2022 wasn't quite as hot as 2021. The seasonality thing's still there as expected. But yeah, that's the overall trend. And this is probably looking more, that was a positive. So this is, which is the number of reports received. So this is looking at the total observer effort. And I had, when I first started putting this graph together, I expected to see a trend where as prediction quality improved, that observers would get more picky and only chase ones that were better prospects. And so the number of events monitored and the number of positives would close, but that hasn't really been the case. Also, in this graph, we're looking at the number of events and the number of reports. They're different because a certain number of events will have multiple reports received. So it's observers coordinating or teaming up as the ideal outcome. And it's pleasing to see that, you know, that they're reasonably that there is more reports received than just events. Not everything's just a single observer observing by themselves. And I've added Bill's trend in there too, just to show the level of his contribution to the process is quite significant, which I think is in the next box. Total reports and total positive chords. I think for pretty much everyone on that list except for John Broughton, we were mostly a bunch of stay-at-homes or only observed from a single location, with John going mobile, where will observe far fewer events than the rest of us, but he will do the multiple stations and score more chords. I think for most people, the numbers are down, except for the two Daves, Dave Galton, Dave Herald, and Peter Nosworthy, somehow managed to buck the climate change, the climate trend, and observe even if it was cloudy. Not sure how they did that. Okay, so just the standard call. The Excel report form is still the way to go. We've got quite a lot of observers these days now using digital cameras, as in digital CMOS style cameras, not with time inserters. And that's a little more challenging to use with the reporting format. The reporting format, I acknowledge that it doesn't fit that very well. Quite a few observers are using the American version of that report, which fits it better, but still not particularly well. There's definitely a need for a different and improved reporting process. Something we can talk about in TTSO17 next year. Send your reports to the MP observations at occultations.org.nz. I know a couple of years ago we had some trouble where those emails were bouncing and reports weren't getting to me. I'm not aware of that being a problem at the moment. If it is, please let me know. I, as a matter of course, try to acknowledge every observation, often in batches. If you don't get an acknowledgement from me for an observation, or if you go and look at the reports, the results page on the website and you can't see your observation there, let me know. Something may have missed. And something that we're all really bad at doing is sharing our successes. So on the email group or on Facebook, we've got a couple of channels there, depending on your personal preferences and inclination. It's surprising what actually comes up in response to that. You might recall a couple of months back, I posted a light curve for an occultation, and I can't even remember the name of the asteroid. It was one where there was a suspicion of a satellite previously in a paper written out of Paris Observatory in the 1980s. And I posted the light curve, which had a lone low point well away from the main event, just to the TTOA group. I didn't post it any more widely than that. And I think within 36 hours, I had an email back from Paris asking questions. And I've now shared that observation with them. So they're keen to follow through on that. It's surprising who's watching and listening, and how our observations may be used. Maybe Dave will talk more about that later. Okay, so one of the things I'm very conscious of is that I don't have anything like as much time to do this stuff as I would like to have, and there is way more stuff to do than I am even capable of skills-wise or just time of day. So I've got a bunch of position vacant ads here for some suggestions of how people might want to get involved. I'm very aware that we've got a lot of people, a lot of members who live in places with pretty horrible weather. And so there's sort of this unspoken concept that to get involved, you need to be out observing. Well, that's not really the case. You can get involved in a lot more ways than that. I just want to flag a couple of things this afternoon for you as suggestions for other things that people can be involved in, even if they're not freezing out on their scope on an August night trying to watch something blink. So the first one, pretty obvious one. It's our HTML museum known as a website. It needs a serious update. A lot of the content that's on there is no longer relevant, particularly now with Occult Watcher Cloud operating. I'd like to not be taking up time and resources doing prediction updates when Occult Watcher Cloud is there to do that sort of stuff. One of the things that, and it's actually one of the other jobs, doesn't necessarily be part of this piece, was we have the Video Observers manual, which is an amazing resource and is, I understand and appreciate, it's used widely on a global scale because of the quality of it, and want to acknowledge Jackie's huge effort in making that thing happen. Unfortunately, stuff like that gets out of date really quickly. And I had a conversation, actually had several conversations with RS&Z Council about various matters. And one of the things they were suggesting is that to rewrite and revamp that manual is a very daunting undertaking, and maybe a better, more 21st century way to approach this was to build a library of videos. I think I've got that as, I don't know, getting ahead of myself. And so integrating that into the website, or potentially integrating that with the RS&Z who've offered some resources to help that to happen. So yeah, my vision for the website going forward is probably something much simpler. It's a reference point to resources that are elsewhere online, and perhaps more of even a blog type arrangement when there are significant observations that are of interest. We can write about a short 2 paragraphs about them, throw in a light curve, and promote them there, in parallel with what we do on the social media side. That's the website one. Observation reception. This is the stuff that takes up way too much of my time. I sometimes think that I'm just very slow at doing it, but maybe someone else has a go at this, they'll be much more efficient. So basically, the MP observations email comes in with people's observations, and then I file them on a OneDrive structure that I share with Dave Galt, who actually does the processing. So all I'm doing is reception and filing. A lot of that involves responding. A lot of emails come in with questions and queries, and responding to that. Yes, there's some expertise required in that, but also, you know, I may not necessarily be the right person to answer some of those questions. So there's some referencing around to other people to answer various questions when they come up and offer advice and guidance. It's currently taking me about 5 hours a week to chug away through that. Summertime, mercifully, is much less than that. Wintertime, if there's a good clear week in southeastern Australia, yeah, I'm stuck at the computer all day. So someone to help in that role, perhaps because we've got that email address, we can share that with any number of people, and we can make some decisions about how we split that up. Say someone does a given month or a given week, options like that. Video content, this is, I've probably already spoken mostly about this, but the Video Observers Guide, revamping that in perhaps as a video format. I don't have any experience on how to produce such a video. You know, it would be like an online demonstration, or even, you know, some of the stuff that we have in TTSO. But I'm looking to the idea of putting together a library of how to do stuff in fairly small, easily swallowable chunks. It could be around how to use Occult, how to use Tangra, how to set up the camera on the back of your telescope, how to interpret predictions, setting exposures and ideal signal to noise ratio, those sorts of things. Interesting floating the idea about how we could build a whole library of those sorts of resources for people to use. And when technology moves on in one bit, well, you just retire that and you record a new video and work it like that. As I said, RAS and Z Council have offered to effectively host these things if they are problematic to host. I don't know if they are or not, and I'm not sure what software you would use for capturing a screen demonstration. I'm sure it's out there, but it's not my experience. So if people can help in that space, that would be really, really good. And the last one, and I think Dave Herald beat me to this with an email he wrote yesterday, day before. There's a lot of stuff out of our observations that can get written up and needs to be written up in order for it to be real in the scientific sense. You don't necessarily have to have been the observer involved. In fact, John Talbot was really quite good at this in terms of writing up interesting observations that came through his hands as a regional coordinator, but weren't necessarily his observations. Obviously, he's the author, so he gets to have his name in lights. But it's just it ranges from simple stuff. I think Dave's email the other night was around double stars that have been discovered, but not properly characterized and reported, through to potentially much more expansive topics. Again, RAS and Z, we had a council meeting where they was basically asking what are various observing sections in the RAS and Z wanted from council. And one of the suggestions and offers came up was that professional coaching on paper writing. If you think you're a little unsure about how to draft and prepare stuff, they have links to professional astronomers who write papers professionally, and they were keen to offer that as a service to support our activities, because they saw us as one group that was producing significant scientific results that would benefit from that. The other thing that probably stands out for me there is JOA. So JOA is a great forum for sharing stuff. The amount of Australian, New Zealand content in there is pretty light. We have a lot more to say, I think. Consider writing something around results, around experiences. Yeah, we need to be a little more active in that space. And I think this is the last one, TTSO coordinator. So as conversations with Steve Russell have gone, TTSO18 will be next year in Parkes, in a physical meeting for the first time since 2019. Obviously, we're never going to be able to put the online genie back in the bottle. And so it will be a Zoom in the same way as this. But we are looking to get back to some level of physical meeting. One of the things that's very striking about online only meetings is that the only people that come along are people who are into occultations. And so it's completely useless as a vehicle for recruiting new observers. Whereas tying it up with NACAR, where hopefully we've got access to other people who have an interest or the equipment, we can potentially grow the group, because at the moment it's very, very hard to reach new people. We seem to have been able to, but it's very, very difficult. So TTSOs, there's a little bit of work there involved in pulling together the programs, chasing up some speakers, and coordinating with the NACAR people. So if anyone's keen to get involved in TTSO18, and no, it's not an obligation to attend a physical meeting or even attend the virtual meeting. So don't think that that's a necessity for helping out. Any assistance on this space would be really appreciated. And I think I've probably already spilled the beans. TTSO18 next year. It'll be a single day program on April Fool's Day, which hopefully isn't a bad thing, in parks. And Steve's talking about having some occultation themed speeches within the Sunday session of NACA, again, getting occultation science and the stuff that we do in front of people who haven't been necessarily involved to date. Or it's never too early to get some suggestions as to topics and papers to speak to. And that's it for me. Any questions?
Steve, I'm happy to help out with scheduling and keeping a list of speakers, communications in general, setting up. I've done that a number of years in the past, so I'm quite happy to do that again.
Very good. Okay, thank you. And no, you don't all have to volunteer all at once this afternoon. I'm actually on the road away from home and actually won't be home until September, so my email is going to be a little sketchy till then. But any support in any of those topics will help things go better.
A question I have about NACA next year at Parks is, seem to recollect there was some issue last time with the Elvis Presley stuff. Is that at Parks?
It is at Parks, but that's held in January, so it doesn't clash with NACA at all. Yeah, about the only iffy thing at the moment, not quite sure which of the two venues will be out on the Monday, but we will have a venue with internet access and stuff. We just may not need to have the large venue, because if they're the only thing on the Monday, it makes sense to go to a smaller venue next door. But yeah, definitely we'll be fine. There is a car club meeting now. I should mention, I was going to mention it later on, I might as well mention it now. I'll be sending out an email to previous NACA people fairly soon, encouraging you to book your accommodation, because we just found out a few weeks ago that this car meeting that was going to be held in 2020 is also reappearing this Easter in Parks. So there might be a little bit of pressure on accommodations. There's several hundred rooms in the town, but don't leave it too late to make your bookings. And I'll be sending out the preliminary program as well to give you an idea of, which days you want to attend.
Very good. Thanks, Steve. Any other questions, comments before we hand over to Dave? Okay, Murray, it's probably a place to break the recording. Dave, are you ready to go?